Good afternoon, Dr. London. I'm here to ask you some questions about your blog. First, why did you set up a blog about Vietnam? Can you tell us more about the background of the blog?
Well, I basically started the blog to share some of my thoughts and ideas about social life in Vietnam. I've done research on Vietnam for 20 years or so, and I thought it would be a good idea to begin to write shorter pieces to a broader audience, both in Vietnamese and in English, to share some of my perspectives and also to have some dialogue with readers, both within and outside Vietnam.
Second, I understand the blog has received much international readership. Why do you think there has been such strong interest?
Well, the interest in the blog, I think, stems from two reasons. Actually, there are two blogs, not one. And the one that has received the most attention is the Vietnamese language blog. That's enjoyed a fairly large readership, both from Vietnamese in Vietnam and from hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese living in other parts of the world. I write actually much less on the English language blog. That has received increasing attention, especially after recent tensions in the Southeast Asian Sea relating to China's aims to enforce its claims over the region.
You mentioned about the confrontation between China and Vietnam in South China Sea. How did you react to the blog to the recent workers' riots, and also as well as the issue of political reforms in Vietnam?
Well, the recent tensions between Vietnam and China, including the riots that took place in Vietnam afterwards, and subsequent tensions between Hanoi and Beijing, all stem from competition really between different claims over the region. And everybody is trying, of course, to figure out the best way of dealing with the situation. But for Vietnam, the riots were extremely unfortunate. I think in part it stems from the fact that the Vietnamese state had relatively little idea about how to manage and organize political expression in the wake of Chinese efforts to drill within Vietnam's exclusive economic zone, and it got quickly out of control. I think the important thing about those riots actually is that the causes are complex and in fact are still not entirely understood. And so, what we face in Vietnam today is a country that is struggling to deal with a direct challenge to its sovereignty, but also a country that is struggling to maintain social order during a period in which people are, understandably upset within Vietnam, and frankly, they have not quite figured it out. And so, my analysis in May and June about the situation and current discussions about Vietnam are closely related to this issue of the political situation inside the country, because I think I'm not alone in the perspective that in order for Vietnam to make a case internationally, it needs also to overcome certain divisions within Vietnam and put together a united front, really, and that hasn't occurred yet.
I would like to go back to your blog. We noted that your blog is written in English and Vietnamese, as you mentioned. Why did you decide to use these two languages? Are you targeting at particular groups of readers?
Well, obviously the Vietnamese blog is not targeting English speakers. It's targeting Vietnamese, and I thought that there would be interest among Vietnamese in my perspectives on their country. And I have not been mistaken. There's been a great interest, and it's it's really been a pleasant experience. Not always easy, because you write about controversial targets and you're subjected to a fair amount of criticism, but you have to go into it with a somewhat thick skin. But it's been enormously gratifying. I am on a weekly basis engaging with large numbers of Vietnamese over a range of political and social issues in Vietnam, and it's great fun. With respect to the English side of the blog, again, I do write on the English side less often, but I use it as a chance to share my views and perspectives with folks in Vietnam and internationally who don't speak Vietnamese but have an interest in the country. And in the coming months, I'll make more of an effort to write more regularly in English. But part of the challenge is that writing in Vietnamese is time-consuming and very enjoyable, and so I sometimes don't spend as much time on the English side as I might, but I plan to.
Okay. Finally, can you tell us briefly about your recent research and your recent articles or book publications?
Well, my most recent publication is actually an edited volume entitled Politics in Contemporary Vietnam, and that was published by Palgrave. It was just published this past May 2014, and it has a range of essays addressing issues such as the Communist Party of Vietnam, the status of representative politics, in particular the National Assembly in Vietnam, subnational politics, relations within the Vietnamese state around issues of accountability, also issues related to dissent, civil society, and state repression. And if I dare say so, I think it's a great book, very timely, and it is an analysis, it provides an analysis of Vietnam at a very interesting time in the country's history. Even before these tensions with China rose to the surface, Vietnam has been in the midst of remarkable changes, particularly in its political culture. Really, for the first time in decades in Vietnam, you have a situation in which there is relatively unrestricted discussion and debate about politics. People are interested in the politics of the country in a way that they previously were not, in part because they sense the country is facing some major challenges that it needs to overcome. Aside from that book, I recently co-authored a piece with Eddie Molesky of Duke University that investigated and compared the political economy of development in China and Vietnam. And a project that I'm currently working on addresses the evolution of welfare institutions in Vietnam, particularly in the context of its transition to a market economy. And then just recently, I have embarked on a very large-scale project which will be the Rutledge Handbook of Contemporary Vietnam, that will comprise about 40 specially commissioned essays addressing social, political, economic, cultural aspects of social life in contemporary Vietnam. And of course, the hope is that this will be a major contribution to current efforts to understand Vietnam, which from the past until the present, it has to be said, is among the world's and the region's most least understood countries. So between the blogging and the research, I maintain a very active engagement with Vietnam, and look forward to continuing with this work.
Thank you for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Rutledge.
Cheers.